How do you build an army when no one's signing up? Do you throw money at the problem, or try something much stranger? Think soldiers paid with farmland, towns forced to send recruits like a yearly subscription, and spies trained to hide secrets inside their own bodies. History's recruitment tactics get weird, fast. Today, we're uncovering the most bizarre ways armies found new troops. Let's start in ancient Egypt, a civilization famous for its pyramids, pharaohs, and surprisingly modern HR problems. Running an empire takes a lot of soldiers, and the Egyptians were in constant need of fresh bodies. They did conscript their own people, but they also leaned heavily on foreign mercenaries. The question is, how do you keep a soldier loyal when they're only in it for the money? The Egyptian solution was brilliant. They offered them land. During the New Kingdom period, foreign mercenaries like the famous Sheridan or the Nubians were often given plots of land to settle on. This wasn't just a 401k, it was a genius tool for assimilation and control. By owning property, these soldiers now had a literal stake in the nation they were paid to defend. They weren't just hired swords anymore, they were landowners and taxpayers with a vested interest in keeping Egypt safe and stable. This strategy worked so well that many of these mercenary groups eventually integrated into Egyptian society over generations. It was a savvy way to turn economic disparity into military might, guaranteeing a steady supply of motivated fighters. Now let's jump forward to medieval Europe, where recruitment was a chaotic mix of duty, obligation, and pure desperation. The go-to method was the feudal levy, where a king called his lords, and the lords called their vassals, to round up troops. But what happened when the nobles couldn't find enough knights? Well, that responsibility often fell on entire communities. In some parts of Europe, this was a form of civic conscription, and it turned military service into a bizarre and terrifying civic duty. Towns and cities could be legally required to provide a quota of soldiers for the king's next campaign. Imagine your mayor calling an emergency town meeting, not to debate a new park, but to announce the city owes the crown 50 able-bodied men by Friday. To enforce this, some towns kept detailed muster rolls, listing every man who could be called to fight. When the summons came, it might be announced by the frantic ringing of church bells or the lighting of signal beacons, an alarm that meant it was time to pay your dues in blood. Coastal towns had it even worse, as they were often on the hook for providing not just men, but entire ships and crews to fight off pirates or enemy navies. This system blurred the line between civilian and soldier, making defense a collective and often dreaded responsibility. While some medieval soldiers were forced into service, a new kind of professional warrior was on the rise, one who fought not for a lord, but for a paycheck. By the 14th century, in places like England, the old feudal system was slowly being replaced by something that looks a lot like modern contracting. Kings and nobles started raising armies by issuing indentures, which were basically formal contracts for military service. Think of it as history's deadliest freelance gig. A captain would sign an indenture with the king, promising to raise a specific number of troops, say 20 knights, 50 men-at-arms, and 100 longbowmen, for a set period. That captain then went out and recruited his soldiers. These contracts were incredibly detailed, spelling out a soldier's pay, length of service, required gear, and even how to split up any loot or ransoms. The document itself was written twice on a single sheet of parchment, which was then cut in a jagged, tooth-like pattern. The captain kept one half, and the other party kept the other. The only way to prove the contract was real was to fit the two indented pieces together perfectly. This system created a new class of career soldiers who fought for the highest bidder, professionalizing warfare one contract at a time. Fast forward to the 20th century, where recruitment became a massive psychological marketing campaign. During World War II, governments didn't just need soldiers. They needed the absolute, unwavering support of the entire nation. To get it, they launched one of the biggest propaganda efforts in history. In 1942, the US government created the Office of War Information, which hired artists, filmmakers, and ad executives to sell the war to the American public. Suddenly, propaganda posters were everywhere: post offices, train stations, and schools. These weren't just simple requests to enlist. They were masterpieces of psychological influence. They used patriotism, fear, and social pressure to make joining the military feel like the only honorable thing to do. While the iconic Uncle Sam, I Want You poster was actually a holdover from World War I, it was brought back and used extensively to drive home the message. Other posters were more sinister, with slogans like "Loose lips might sink ships," turning casual gossip into a potential act of treason. The goal was to put the country on a total war footing, where every citizen was a production soldier, and every single action was dedicated to victory. War was no longer just a job for soldiers. It was a product being sold to an entire population, and business was booming. After the patriotic crusades of the World Wars, military recruitment hit a new obstacle: a changing society. By the late 20th century, the old calls to pure patriotism just weren't cutting it anymore. So the military adapted, shifting its pitch from "serve your country" to "serve your career." This was the dawn of targeted advertising. Military recruiters started acting like corporate headhunters, pinpointing specific demographics and tailoring the message. In the 1970s and 80s, you started seeing magazine ads aimed directly at women and minorities, framing military service not as a duty, but as a path to independence, education, and professional skills. The ads promised career fulfillment, high-tech training, and a way to get ahead. The military was now in direct competition with corporations and colleges for the best and brightest, and it sharpened its strategy. This pivot also fueled recruitment for highly specialized roles. The Cold War didn't just need trigger pullers. It needed scientists, engineers, and intelligence experts. Elite units began offering advanced training and better pay to attract skilled people who might have otherwise ended up in Silicon Valley instead of a missile silo. And now we arrive at what might be the most modern and surreal recruitment technique of all: turning video games into a recruiting ground. Facing shortfalls and a generation raised on digital entertainment, militaries around the world, especially in the US, made a bold play. They decided to meet young people exactly where they are, on platforms like Twitch and YouTube. The US Army, Navy, and Air Force all have their own esports teams, staffed by active duty soldiers who are literally paid to play video games professionally. These teams, with names like the Navy's Goats and Glory, compete in tournaments and stream to thousands of viewers, all while trying to be relatable and bust myths about military life. Recruiters set up booths at major gaming conventions, and the Army even developed its own video games. But this strategy has been hugely controversial. Critics argue that using popular games like Call of Duty to reach audiences on platforms frequented by teens glamorizes conflict and sanitizes its brutal reality. In one infamous 2020 incident, the Army's Twitch channel was caught using a fake giveaway for an Xbox controller that sneakily redirected users to a recruitment form, a move that Twitch itself had to shut down. Under Napoleon, France used a national draft lottery. Young men were assigned numbers, and a yearly drawing decided who went to war. Families desperate to avoid service would hire replacements, meaning rich families could escape while the poor took their place. This odd system created resentment, but also gave France a massive manpower advantage, contributing to Napoleon's rapid expansion across Europe. Which of these bizarre recruitment tactics did you find the most effective or the most insane? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.